First contacts ripple. Dr. Elena Santos wasn't supposed to be awake when humanity made first contact. The quantum resonance scanner she'd modified against safety protocols had been running its unauthorized sequence at 300 ship time, searching for what her colleagues called impossible particles, when the entire device went dark. Then every system on the research vessel Boundless Discovery dimmed simultaneously. "Computer, status report," she called out, already pulling up emergency protocols on her neural interface. The ship's AI remained silent. Elena felt her heart rate quicken as she realized even the backup systems weren't responding. Through the observation dome above her lab, she watched as a massive shape eclipsed the stars themselves. The object? No. The ship was beautiful in its geometric precision. Every curve and angle seemed to follow perfect mathematical ratios, its surface a dark material that absorbed rather than reflected light. It made the Boundless Discovery, humanity's most advanced research vessel, look like a child's sketch next to a master's painting. Elena's neural interface suddenly flared to life, but instead of the familiar blue interface, she saw symbols scrolling in perfect formations, mathematical equations so complex they made her head spin. Then, a voice that seemed to exist purely in her mind. "Your species' technological signature is fascinating, inefficient, chaotic, yet you achieve what should be impossible." The voice belonged to beings who called themselves the Axiom Collective. They had been watching humanity for months, puzzled by how an inferior civilization had managed to breach quantum barriers their own perfect models said couldn't be crossed. The human drive to explore, to push boundaries, to break rules, it all violated their fundamental understanding of progress. "Your modified scanner," the voice continued, "it defies our equations. Explain." Elena smiled despite her fear. "Sometimes you have to break the rules to find something new," she said. "Perfect systems can miss imperfect truths." The axioms, as humanity would come to call them, manifested as holographic forms, beings of pure geometry and light. Their bodies shifted through perfect platonic solids as they moved through the lab, examining Elena's crude modifications with what she could only interpret as confusion. "You intentionally introduced instability to expand the scanner's range," one observed, its form cycling through increasingly complex geometric patterns. "This violates fundamental principles of quantum observation." "Yet it works," Elena replied. She pulled up her latest scans, showing traces of particles that shouldn't exist, quantum echoes that hinted at dimensions beyond normal spacetime. "We found evidence of something your perfect models missed." The axiom's forms pulsed with what might have been agitation. Their civilization had spent millennia perfecting their understanding of the universe through pure mathematics and logic. The idea that progress could come through imperfection, through trial and error, through breaking established rules, it challenged everything they believed. As dawn broke across Earth's distant horizon, more ships of the Axiom Collective emerged from what Elena now recognized as artificially generated quantum spaces. Their arrival would mark the beginning of a relationship that would challenge both civilizations' understanding of progress, perfection, and the true nature of intelligence. The axioms had achieved technological mastery through perfect order. Humanity had achieved it through embracing chaos, through learning from failure, through being willing to break rules and try the impossible. Neither species yet realized that this fundamental difference would soon become crucial to the survival of both. Elena watched as the axioms continued their inspection, their perfect forms reflected in her imperfect scanner. She knew that this meeting was just the beginning. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to adapt, to change, to evolve. And now, faced with beings who had achieved perfect order, that strength would be tested in ways no one could predict. "Tell me," she asked the nearest axiom, "what happens when your perfect models encounter something they can't explain?" The being's form shifted to a perfect sphere, their equivalent of a defensive posture. "That is impossible. Our models account for all variables." Elena's scanner chose that moment to ping, detecting another impossible particle. Are you sure about that? The paradox of chaos. The Axiom Collective's primary research vessel, mathematical constant, hung in high Earth orbit like a crystalline snowflake. Inside, first observer Ta Sequence watched the chaotic dance of human quantum particles with growing unease. Their perfect sensors had been recording human experiments for 3 months now, and the results defied every principle of their civilization's physics. Play it again, Ta Sequence commanded, their form shifting through increasingly complex geometric patterns. The holographic display showed Dr. Elena Santos' latest experiment, what the humans called quantum intuitive computing. The human device was absurdly crude by Axiom standards: exposed wires, improvised shielding, components that seemed randomly assembled. Yet somehow, it was achieving computation rates that rivaled Axiom quantum cores. More disturbing still, it was solving problems their perfect systems claimed were unsolvable. How? Ta Sequence demanded of second observer Pyloop. Their technology violates every principle of efficient design. Their methods are random, their approaches illogical. They should not be achieving these results. Pyloop's crystalline form pulsed with harmonics that indicated deep concern. They appear to be guessing. Impossible. One cannot guess their way through quantum mechanics. Watch. The display showed Elena working with her team. They were attempting to stabilize a quantum field that Axiom science had proven could not be stabilized. Their approach seemed haphazard, adjusting variables based on hunches, following what they called gut feelings, even deliberately introducing errors to see what would happen. Then the impossible occurred. The quantum field not only stabilized but began exhibiting properties the axioms had never observed. The humans cheered, hugged each other, celebrated their lucky break. They hadn't even fully understood why it worked. This defies all logic, Ta Sequence stated, their form becoming increasingly angular with distress. Their success rate should be 0, yet they succeed 28.3% of the time. They are achieving the impossible through chaos. In the 3 months since first contact, similar reports had come in from Axiom observers across the solar system. Humans were breaking through technological barriers that should have been insurmountable, not through perfect understanding, but through what they called innovation and thinking outside the box. The Axioms had spent millennia perfecting their civilization through pure logic and mathematical precision. Every advance was carefully calculated, every step forward precisely measured. The idea that progress could come through random chance, through failure and adaptation, through breaking established rules, it threatened to unravel their entire worldview. There is more, Pyloop communicated, bringing up new data. Their quantum intuitive computing is beginning to access dimensional spaces our models cannot detect. They are seeing something our perfect sensors miss. The implications were staggering. The Axioms had built their civilization on the principle that perfection was the path to advancement. Their technology, their society, their very thought processes were based on absolute precision and perfect logic. But now they faced a species that achieved breakthrough after breakthrough by embracing imperfection. We must understand their methodology, Ta Sequence decided. Prepare for deep integration protocols. I will personally interface with their quantum systems. Caution advised, Pyloop warned. Their chaotic approaches may be infectious. 3 of our observation units have already begun exhibiting irregular behavior after prolonged exposure to human thinking patterns. Elaborate. They have started experimenting, breaking protocols. 1 unit suggested that our perfect models might be incomplete. The word incomplete sent harmonic shudders through the mathematical constants crystal corridors. The very idea challenged the foundational principles of Axiom civilization. Yet the evidence was becoming undeniable. Somehow, human imperfection was letting them perceive and manipulate aspects of reality that Axiom perfection couldn't grasp. As Ta Sequence prepared for direct interface with human quantum systems, they experienced an unfamiliar sensation, something like uncertainty. Perhaps, they reflected, This was how humans felt all the time. How did they function like this? How did they achieve anything while constantly doubting, questioning, guessing? The answer would come sooner than expected, and it would shake the Axiom collective to its perfectly ordered core. Breaking point. The anomaly appeared without warning. At first, it seemed like a simple gravitational distortion near Jupiter's orbit, the kind of cosmic phenomenon both humans and Axioms had studied countless times before. But this was different. This was impossible. It's eating space-time itself, Elena Santos announced to the Joint Human Axiom Research Council. The holographic display showed a region of space that simply ended. Not a black hole, not a dimensional rift, but a complete absence of physical laws themselves. Ta sequence's geometric form shifted through agitated patterns. Our models cannot explain this. The mathematics. They'd break down completely. The Axiom Collective's perfect sensors were giving contradictory readings. Their quantum computers, capable of calculating the position of every particle in a star system, crashed when trying to analyze the anomaly. For the first time in their history, the Axioms faced something their perfect logic couldn't comprehend. It's expanding, Elena continued, her modified scanner displaying data that even the Axioms couldn't detect. At its current rate, it'll reach Jupiter's moons in 72 hours, Earth in 2 weeks. The Axiom representatives began cycling through increasingly complex geometric forms, their version of panic. Their entire civilization was based on perfect understanding, perfect prediction. This anomaly violated everything they knew about reality itself. We must achieve consensus, one Axiom declared. We must perfect our models before attempting any response. Elena slammed her hand on the table. We don't have time for perfect. We need to act now. Try something, anything. Unacceptable, Ta Sequence responded. Action without perfect understanding will only. They were interrupted by a sudden surge in the anomaly size. The void expanded, swallowing 3 of Jupiter's smaller moons instantly. The Axiom's perfect sensors overloaded, their crystalline ships vibrating with harmonic distress. Our defenses are failing, Pi Loop reported, their form flickering between states. The void. It does not follow any known physical laws. Our perfect systems cannot adapt. That's when Elena noticed something strange in her scanner's readings. The void wasn't completely random. There was a pattern, but not the kind that could be captured by perfect mathematical models. It was more like music, like jazz, with its improvised rhythms and spontaneous harmonies. Look, she said, converting the void's emissions into audio. The sound filled the chamber, chaotic yet somehow coherent, like a symphony played by quantum strings. The Axioms recoiled from the sound, but Elena felt something click in her mind. It's not destruction, she realized. It's transformation. The void isn't eating reality. It's rewriting it. And it's doing it through improvisation. Impossible, Ta Sequence stated, but their perfect certainty was wavering. Reality cannot be improvised. Elena smiled grimly. Want to bet? Humans have been improvising reality since we first banged rocks together to make fire. Sometimes, the only way forward is to embrace the chaos. She turned to her team. Get me quantum resonance generators. All of them. And I need volunteers who can play musical instruments. You cannot be serious. An Axiom protested. You propose to fight a reality-destroying anomaly with music? Not just music, Elena replied, already modifying her scanner to interface with the quantum generators. We're going to jam with it. Match its rhythms, sync with its patterns, then gradually guide it into harmony with normal space. The Axioms watched in horror and fascination as humans began setting up what looked like the strangest concert in history. Quantum generators were linked to synthesizers, neural interfaces connected to drums and guitars. Elena's modified scanner became a cosmic mixing board. This violates every principle of scientific methodology, Ta Sequence observed. Exactly, Elena said, adjusting frequencies. That's why it might work. Sometimes you have to break the rules to save them. As the void approached, threatening to unravel reality itself, humanity prepared to face it not with perfect equations or flawless logic, but with creativity, intuition, and the wild courage to improvise in the face of impossible odds. The axioms had achieved greatness through perfection. But as they watched the humans prepare their insane plan, they began to wonder if perhaps there was something they had missed in their pursuit of absolute order. Perhaps there was power in imperfection that their perfect models could never grasp. The void loomed closer, reality unraveling at its edges, and in response, humanity prepared to do what it had always done best: adapt, create, and find hope in the chaos itself. Evolution's children. The quantum concert hall, hastily assembled aboard the boundless Discovery, looked more like a mad scientist's laboratory than humanity's last hope. Synthesizers merged with quantum resonance generators, neural interfaces tangled with guitar strings, and Elena's modified scanner pulsed with otherworldly energy as it translated the void's chaos into audible patterns. Final checks, Elena called out, her fingers dancing across the scanner's interface. Around her, musicians and physicists alike prepared their instruments, both scientific and musical. The void had already consumed half of Jupiter's moons, and its expansion was accelerating. Tau Sequence and a group of Axiom observers watched from their crystalline observation platform, their geometric forms shifting between states of confusion and fascination. Their perfect sensors continued to fail, unable to process the fundamental wrongness of the void. You truly believe you can communicate with a reality-destroying anomaly through musical improvisation? Tau Sequence asked, their form displaying patterns of deep skepticism. Elena adjusted her neural interface. We're not just communicating with it. We're going to dance with it. She paused, considering how to explain it to beings who had never embraced imperfection. The void isn't destroying reality. It's speaking a different language of physics, one that can't be understood through perfect mathematics alone. The first waves of quantum resonance began to pulse through the ship. The musicians started slow, establishing a baseline rhythm that matched the void's own strange frequencies. Elena's scanner translated the anomaly's patterns into haunting melodies that seemed to twist through dimensions. "Look at this," she said, pointing to her readings. "The void's patterns, they're not random. They're evolving, adapting, responding to changes around them, just like life itself." The Axiom's forms flickered with distress at the comparison. Their civilization had achieved spacefaring status through perfect, controlled evolution. The idea of natural, chaotic evolution was almost offensive to them. But they couldn't deny what they were seeing. As the human musicians began to improvise, following the strange quantum melodies, the void's expansion slowed. More than that, it began to respond, its patterns shifting to match the human-generated frequencies. "Impossible," Pi-Luke declared, their geometric form becoming increasingly irregular. "They are affecting it through intuition, without understanding its fundamental nature." "That's exactly it," Elena said, her eyes bright with revelation. "Humans evolved in a chaotic world. We had to develop pattern recognition that went beyond pure logic. Our minds evolved to find meaning in chaos, to intuit connections that pure mathematics might miss." The quantum concert was building now, human creativity merging with the void's alien patterns. Where the Axioms saw only chaos, human musicians heard rhythms, melodies, opportunities for harmony. They weren't fighting the void. They were learning to speak its language. "Your species," Tau Sequence observed, their form showing signs of unprecedented irregularity. "You do not seek to impose order on chaos. You adapt to it. Become one with it." "Better than that," Elena replied, watching as the void's expansion not only stopped but began to reverse. "We learned from it. Every failure, every mistake, every bit of chaos we encounter becomes part of our strength." The revelation shook the Axioms to their core. Their pursuit of perfection had led them to create incredible technologies, but it had also blinded them to entire dimensions of reality. The human capacity for improvisation, for working with chaos rather than against it, wasn't a weakness. It was an evolutionary advantage they had never imagined possible. As the void began to respond to the human-led quantum symphony, transforming from a threat into something new and beautiful, the axioms faced an uncomfortable truth. Perhaps their perfect evolution had led them down a path that was ultimately limiting. Perhaps humanity's flawed evolution had given them abilities that perfection could never achieve. The quantum concert hall became a testament to the power of imperfection. Human musicians, following nothing but intuition and creativity, were doing what the most advanced axiom computers could not. They were communicating with a phenomenon that defied perfect logic. And as the void's patterns began to harmonize with normal spacetime, guided by human improvisation and intuition, the axioms witnessed something that challenged their fundamental understanding of the universe. They watched as humanity demonstrated that sometimes the most powerful force in the cosmos isn't perfect order, but the ability to dance with chaos itself. The implications would forever change both civilizations' understanding of consciousness, evolution, and the true nature of reality. For in humanity's apparent weakness, their imperfection, their chaos, their constant adaptation, lay a strength that perfect order could never match. Perfect imperfection. 1 year after the Void incident, the Sol system had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Axiom Collective's perfect geometric ships now showed subtle variations in their crystalline structures. Their once rigid formations had become more fluid, more adaptive. And aboard the newly commissioned joint research vessel Quantum Harmony, Alina Santos watched as something unprecedented took place.